Today on Future Forward, cable cord cutters battle with Fios and Spectrum over price and services.
Then, is tech powering new cancer cures?
And summertime concerts and weed. Are you still breaking the law?
I'm Alexa Scordato.
I am Steve Rosenbaum, and let us launch. Hey Alexa, how are you?
Hey, Steve.
All right, so let's play the game we're playing every week this summer. Where in the world is Alexa Scordato this week?
I am in the Dordogne Valley.
And as you described it to me, there's a fable involved?
It's this cute, quaint town in France, maybe 2 hours west of Bordeaux. So if you can picture Beauty and the Beast, I am in a town that looks exactly like where that movie would be.
Wow, that sounds fabulous. We're going to drag your brain back to US and technology. And by the way, before we get started, as always, a great big shout out to our friends at IEEE Spectrum. IEEE is the largest flagship magazine and website of IEEE, the world's professional organization devoted to engineering and applied sciences. And this week we're going to talk about Spectrum cable, no relation to IEEE Spectrum. So my apologies to our friends at IEEE. We're actually going to do a story of theirs on how laser is destroying cancer cells circulating in the blood, and that's coming up in chapter 3. But we're going to start with chapter 1. Have you had a personal battle with cable television or broadband access or Wi-Fi in your life?
Many, many, many times. As a New Yorker who's had to move many times. Actually, before I left for this trip, I had to transfer my cable account from my account to the person who was moving into my apartment, and I couldn't do it on the phone. I couldn't do it online. I had to trek from Brooklyn all the way up to the Upper West Side and go in person. It was like the epitome of inefficiency, and they're just a thorn in my side.
So I have, the thing that they understand, and the thing that is, we're going to talk about a couple of different stories, but the thing that gets under my skin is they do these entry prices with the understanding that once you get through the first year, they can pretty much charge you whatever they want. Like, I mean, theoretically, there's a New York State kind of, they're supposed to be regulated in some way, but my price for Wi-Fi access, for internet access, literally has gone up every month for the last 5 months.
Yeah. No, it's horrible.
Horrible. And there really isn't a whole lot of choice, right? I mean, it's either it's either Fios or, I mean, did you even in your place in New York, did you even have a shot? Could you have used Fios?
No. I did not have a building that was wired yet.
So essentially, you're out of luck. You're just gonna have to use.
Right. There's only one provider.
Which used to be
Time Warner
Roadrunner, and then something happened, and Comcast, Charter bought Spectrum. I can't even quite figure it out.
Right. And now it's just Spectrum.
So here's my story, and then you can give me good cable advice, and then we'll move on. So they finally, after years of promising, Fios wired my building. And this was supposed to be very exciting for us. Like, Fios is coming, better service, cheaper, better. And it turns out it's none of those things. I was paying, I think, $70 a month. Fios at the entry point was $90, but I kept saying to the person on the phone, aren't you going to charge me for the Wi-Fi router and for the router and for the this and that? Oh yeah, we charge for all that, $12 and $12 and $12. I'm like, so it's not $90, it's like $140.
Yes.
And they're like, well, yeah, but I'm like, so you don't think the difference between $100 a month and $140 a month, which is almost $500 a year, is like a meaningful consumer experience issue? And they're like, no, we think, essentially the tone is, they used to be competitive, and now it seems like they're just
arrogant.
Because what are you gonna do? Really? They know the prices are kind of similar. It's almost like they as long as they keep lurching the prices up so there are two stories that I pulled for today's show. First of all, to make sure I wasn't crazy, and secondly, because maybe some of our fabulous podcast listeners will get in touch and give us advice as to how to beat the evil giant. But the first one is this story about both Spectrum and AT&T saying if you cancel early, they're no longer going to give you back your money.
It's so gross.
Because
forgive my language. It's like they're just like the worst company ever. The shittiest service. They just don't care.
So I'm gonna take devil's advocate on that for a second. Is it that they don't care, or just that they've glommed together so many old, antiquated, crappy systems that literally there's no way to offer consistent software or services across all these hacked together head ends?
I don't know. I mean, it's like they go head to head with the MTA. There's just a lot of poor management, and I don't think there's any empathy for the customers that they're serving.
So I'm again, I didn't mean to be defending them, but since you seem to be on the other side, I'll take the devil's advocate just for fun. The people who you're talking to on the phone literally have virtually no different tools in front of them than you and I do when we log into our Spectrum account. So
yeah.
So it's not that they don't have empathy, it's just that they've got a dashboard that says, oh, you're upset? I can give you $5 off. Well, what if I want $8? I mean, they literally have virtually no more, I assume you've gone...
I don't blame, say, the reps who I'm talking to, who are maybe not trained or they're not empowered. It's a larger systemic issue, and it's probably at the root of it. It boils down to corporate greed. Like you said a few minutes ago, they don't have to be better.
So I found a loophole, which I'm going to tell you about in a minute. But first, one more story. So the other story that I found, and the one that I found fascinating, was the story about, this was Ars Technica story. The headline is, Comcast broke the law 445,000 times in a scheme to inflate bills, judge finds.
You know what my reaction was? That's it. 445,000 times. The population relative to the population of New York that probably uses them.
I thought so. This was the Comcast. It's a slightly different service, but I thought this one was fascinating because essentially what the people on the phone did was said, oh, you need to pay $5 more for this safety service, but essentially they made it seem like it was required when it was essentially a worthless service that you could throw away and get nothing. There was no reason to buy it. So I found that kind of shocking. So let me end this little chapter with some good news. So when I was on the phone trying to, I finally ended up getting rid of my TiVo box, which I know makes me sound like a ridiculous old technology person, but I actually, for a long time, was able to make it work with over-the-air signals. When I finally got rid of it, I was like, there's gotta be a cloud service. So I looked at Sling and I looked at YouTube. It turns out it isn't promoted yet. You can't find it. But if you actually go through and ask for TV choice from Spectrum, they will give you a cloud-only service, no DVR box, no set-top box, and it runs on an app. So you can use it on your phone, you can use it on your Apple TV, you can use it on your Roku, and it's pretty darn good.
So I was a cable subscriber. I've used the app and I've been able to access channels on the road or at friends' places, and I can attest that it does work. But I didn't realize that could actually exist standalone. I thought it was just a benefit to subscribers.
It's standalone and it's cheap. It's
cheap.
$25 bucks.
That sounds like an oxymoron.
$25 a month.
No add-on for HBO.
Showtime, yeah. Well,
bundle, blah blah blah.
Yeah. I don't do that stuff. So,
Yeah.
All right, so that's our secret for our pod listeners is there is at least in New York, a brand new, was released April 19th, brand new service that's got no hardware. You can dial it up and down. We'll see if it works. It's still a little sketchy, but that's my revelation. All right, on to chapter 2, which is actually far less happier things and far less
cooler things.
So this is IEEE talking about lasers destroying cancer cells that circulate in the blood. I thought this was extraordinarily good news.
It's incredible. I actually wish news like this bubbled up to my social media algorithms and were trending on Twitter. It felt triumphant reading it.
I thought so too, and it made me feel like part of it is we've talked on a couple of the recent shows about some of the disillusionment around tech. If there were big medical breakthroughs, I mean the word that caught my eye in the article that drew me into it was non-invasive.
Yes.
I find myself wondering if in 10 years we'll look back at medicine today and say, oh my God, we used to cut people open. We used to have to cut them open. Before we had those great little robot laser things where we could just insert them into the bloodstream and they would go in and stitch things up and cure things. It does seem like it's possible that we may be at a next chapter and this story in particular, in part because it was brilliant and in part because it seemed kind of logical, right? Like lasers and technology targeted at cancer.
Yeah, and we can isolate the cells. We have the nanotechnology to do it. It made me think of a future experience where it's like you think about today's chemo treatment, but you're just almost going to sleep and it's like a tanning bed or something, and you're just laying there, and then it's eliminating, 70-80% of cancer cells in real time.
Do you have friends? I should have asked you before we started the pod, but do you have friends that work in med tech? Is that a space that you have people in?
I have 2 friends who have done MD, PhD programs, and so they're in their final year. They've been in school for 13 years now. So they're not necessarily working with, advanced medical technology, but I do have friends in the medical field.
And so I feel like doctors today, doctors who are, senior in their field, basically spend their days just battling with insurance companies. And I feel like there's a next generation coming up that understands more the mechanics of, how to operate medicine within the current economic structure as opposed to trying to fight the old world.
I actually have so many mixed feelings about it, and I don't have enough data points to say anything conclusive, but I actually worry sometimes that the path of doctors has to be so isolated, specific, focused, that they actually are very removed from technology, at least in the way that you and I are exposed to it.
That's interesting. I will say I went to do my annual checkup last week, and my regular GP, I noticed for the first time that literally I looked at the back of her head for about 75% of the office visit because she was typing on an electronic medical record, and that was the bulk of what she was doing, was filling out a computer.
We need to do a whole episode on new healthcare companies. There's so many interesting companies like Parsley Health, Maven, Forward that are trying to improve the consumer experience through technology.
So I don't know any of the brands you just rattled off, but I will write them down and we will do a show on improving medical technology for consumers. That would be a great show and be interesting because it's not a world that I'm in. All right, so
Yeah.
then there was this last story that we pulled from Northeastern, from the University of Northeastern, which was a program that was training students to transform cancer treatment. Also technology driven, but not quite the same. And this I found different than the IEEE story, in part because it came from an institution. But I just liked hearing and feeling that there was real innovation happening on the cutting edge of a really important, complicated medical category.
Absolutely. Again, I read these stories, I felt optimistic, but then the things that I asked myself were related to the speed of delivery and red tape. And so when you think about advancements happening in, specific labs or research centers, to what extent will that technology actually be available to, say, cancer patients everywhere? To what extent will then the training around these procedures actually infiltrate pedagogy across medical schools? And so the juxtaposition between the world that we are in, which is tech and, say, VC startup growth, et cetera, it's like you want things done yesterday. Here's like a whole pile of cash. Go burn it on some Google ads. I feel like the medical community is almost the opposite, which is here's this breakthrough, but let's temper your expectations because, like drugs or pharmaceuticals, this might be a decade before people actually can benefit from it.
So, related to that, though, it does seem like a lot of what's happening in DNA testing routes around conventional medical approvals, right? Because, where I've lost track now that I say that. I've dug a hole I don't know how to get out of, which is where is 23andMe these days?
There's so many DNA tests, right? Ancestry, 23andMe, color. I don't know. I mean, there's been a lot of money poured into that industry. But and then obviously like the Theranos stories, which make it really fun.
But I mean, and obviously 23andMe is regulated to some extent, but it seems like the DNA testing, the speed of it and the way in which it happened and the kind of remarkable speed at which all of the DNA was sequenced happened because it happened from the tech side of the world, not from the medical side of the world.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of that in so many different capacities. Like traditional institutions, whether it's education, healthcare, public policy, etc., the industries alone can't change. But once tech finds an overlap and then some VC funding, then all of a sudden you can accelerate change as an outsider. But then it never quite infiltrates the industry it was sort of intended or birthed from.
Yeah, the reason that I wanted to talk about technology, particularly in cancer, is it seems to me that it is and again, I don't know the medical ins and outs as well as someone who's in the field, but I have this feeling that the changes that have happened in terms of cancer treatment have been, as you pointed out a minute ago, just glacially slow. There's been little improvements and little discoveries, but I haven't, for as long as I can remember, seen the word breakthrough in cancer. And that was why, both in the case of the laser treatments and then the students that were coming out of Northeastern, I felt like that started to feel like breakthrough.
Right. Yeah. And my whole sentiment was, how come if you hadn't sent this to me, I wouldn't have heard about it.
Well, this is
like, how did you find these stories? Well, you at the IEEE, but the student story.
So here's how I find things. It's a good question, and it raises an interesting, larger question of why things that make you feel good or surprised or interested get drowned out by the same news story coming to you 15 different times from everyone covering the same thing. I pick a category that interests me, and then I drill down and I read deeply. And I don't just read Google News, but I go deep into links and I go to professional journals, and then I start looking for things that I think I can bubble up that aren't necessarily already on the front page of the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or CNBC or one of those places. Because for me, part of what I think the role of the pod is to take technology and then find surprises in what's going on. And nothing would make me happier than being able to come back in a month and say, by the way, here's 5 more great tech and medicine stories that you didn't know about. And so when you said forward, like, I've seen the ads. I don't know what they do. The ads never explained it to me, but I'd love to know more. And I'd love for the pod to share that with people, because, certainly insurance and treatment and all those things, are stuck in the mud and very much old businesses. All right. Well, with that,
speaking of health advances,
we go to our last story. So we'll get there in a second. But my first question is, like, when you're in New York, do you do the summer music thing? Are you like?
Oh yeah, as a proud, decade plus what I call Upper Best Sider, living on the Upper West Side of New York. So basically, Central Park is my backyard. Yes, it's a tradition.
So Central Park Summer Stage is amazing. And I probably go to 10 shows in the summer. And then also all of the free music at Lincoln Center is amazing.
Mm-hmm. And then if you want to do the summer concert series for Good Morning America, they have the plazas at Rockefeller Center, Times Square. I mean, there's no shortage of free music.
I've never done that because my feeling was always it would mostly be endless amounts of waiting to hear 2 songs.
There's a little bit of that, but if you're really a big fan of someone, then it's kind of an experience.
And then, of course, there's fabulous. I mean, New York is a music town, and the summer is at its best. So one of the things that came up in my reporting for today's show was, this headline: can you still get ticketed for marijuana at a New York concert this summer?
And the answer is yes.
But ticketed.
Yes, but.
Yes, but not. So I just, how do you enforce that? I mean, pot isn't legal in New York yet, but kind of seems like it's inevitable it's going to be soon-ish. Maybe,
I mean, I'll be honest. You smell it everywhere. I mean, wouldn't you say that in the last month, forget summer concerts, that you were just walking, somewhere in New York and you smelled it?
Yep. I would say that's right.
Mm-hmm.
So as a concert promoter, and this article, which we got from PressConnects.com, talks about Mountain Jam and Bethel Woods in particular. As a venue, what do you say to your square badge security guys? Like, I mean, they can't ticket anybody, right? So they can say, hey, stop doing that here. Or has everyone pretty much thrown in the towel?
I think everyone's just thrown in the towel. If you are if you're an usher working one of those shows, you smell it, someone might complain. How are you supposed to find the person? I mean, I get bothered by cigarette smoke, and I've tried to find the perpetrator so I could say something. And even as just a concert goer, I can't regulate it.
I would say at an outdoor concert venue, if you want to know who's smoking pot, you just have to listen for the sound of crunchy Doritos. There's it. All right. So the answer to the question is, and again, out to our audience: A, are you going to summer music events this summer? And B, are you bringing weed with you? And if so, does anybody care? Or is it just a matter of between this summer and next summer, it's going to be legal? Everyone knows it. New York State's got neighbors. It's legal already. The cops have pretty much got better things to do. The square badge guys don't care. That would be my guess.
Yeah. And this just makes me think we're going to do a whole other show, too, about the marijuana tech industry.
And
Because I have so many companies that are popping up left and right.
all right,
around
so
it.
so you heard it here on the pod. We're going to do a show on what would you, it's not medical tech though. It's
It's just consumer tech, like the future of your annual physical.
all right. So we're definitely going to do that, and then we are going to do a show about the growing marijuana economy. Whatever.
The highs and lows of
Oh,
marijuana tech.
did you really say that?
I did. I went there.
All right. With that, we are out of time. It's been a great show. By the way, how often on a podcast do you get to hear about people being pissed off at their internet connection, medical technology, and legalization of marijuana all in one bite-sized half hour with Alexa and Steve? How rare is that?
Brought to you by the Dordogne Valley.
Indeed. Have a great week, and we'll see wherever you are a week from now. Bye, Alexa.
Have a great week. Bye.